Hello out there. Today I'm going to be going over a common question I've seen, which is how exactly do these Racetech Gold Valve cartridge emulators work? To go over how they work, first, the easiest thing I know to get started with is explaining how exactly a traditional dampening rod style fork that you find in a lot of Harley Davidson works. All right, so what I've drawn here is one of those. Blue is your fork tube, black here is your valve spring, red is your dampener rod, green is your dampener rod spring, and then this big black one right here is your actual fork lower. All right, so what ends up happening is your fluid flow from your lower reservoir down here to your fork tube, that is what controls your dampening. All right, so whenever you hit a bump, that fluid flows through these dampening rod tube holes back up and up here into your fork tube. That's what controls that dampening. All right, so here's the dampening rod drawn out a little differently. So as we see here, we have these little holes down here, and how that oil flows through those holes is how our dampening works. All right, so the only issue with that is it controls both styles of dampening. It controls both your low speed and your high speed dampening. All right, another way to think of these is low velocity or low volume and high volume. All right, because whenever you hit a bump, a small bump, you have a low volume of oil you're trying to move. And whenever you hit a large bump or a harsh bump, you have a large amount of volume you're trying to move through these orifices, right? So what ends up happening is these manufacturers have to settle with one size hole and do a one size fits all for both suspension situations. So we end up with a small hole. Like if we have a small hole here, it's going to be very nice for those very small bumps that you hit, those low speed bumps. It's going to feel nice and controlled, and it's going to feel very comfortable. Now, whenever you hit those big, large bumps and you're having to move a lot of volume through it, that volume can't move through as fast, and that's going to make it feel very harsh whenever you hit a bump, right? So then we go ahead and let's drill those holes out, right? Let's make those holes huge. All right, so we drilled them out. So now that fluid is easily to flow through our cartridge, right? It can flow through no problem. So now the issue we have is it feels very nice and comfortable whenever we are going and hitting those bumps, those very, very large bumps, and having a lot of volume that has to be pushed through the fork. But when you hit those small bumps, that small fluid is also very easily to move through there, and that's where you end up where your bike, your front end kind of feels like you're on water, and it feels kind of mushy and stuff as you go over to the slow bumps. All right, so what Racetech ended up deciding to do with this gold valve design is they decided to go ahead and just bypass the dampening rod. All right, we're no longer going to use it. So they have us drill out these holes down here very large to where there's actually no longer any dampening effect at all by these holes in the dampening rod. And it moves it to where all the dampening effect is now going to be controlled by how the volume moves through the actual valve up here at the top. Because in a normal dampening rod tube, it is completely unrestricted and the dampening control is down here. Now this is completely unrestricted and the dampening is going to happen up here. All right, so now I'll show you guys on an actual Racetech gold valve how this all works by showing you how it works for your low speed whenever you're hitting a small bump, or high speed whenever you're hitting those big bumps. All right, so now here we have our gold valve, and I'm going to show you how this works. All right, so whenever we hit a small bump and we have a low volume of oil we need to move from this side to this side. All right, so remember, this is the bottom of your fork, this is the top of your fork, and we're trying to move that oil that way. All right, so whenever we have a small amount of oil to move through there, you see these little bitty holes. All right, those are the orifices that we're now going to use for our small speed. All right, our small, whenever we have to move a small amount of oil through. Now, whenever we hit a large bump, we have a lot of oil we need to move through there, right? And it's not going to be able to get through those holes quick enough. So how we do that and control that is by adjusting the tension that ends up being on this little valve plate down here. So that oil goes and it tries to move through the bottom here, and there you go, it opens up, right? You hit a big bump, that oil needs to come shoot through. So now, see right there, you can see where all that oil can go through. And then whenever we're not trying to push a whole lot of volume through and we're only having a small amount of oil that needs to come through, that's closed and it can just move through those little orifices. So what this ends up doing is it gives us two different ways to tune our dampening, all right? We can control our low speed dampening by changing our hole sizes or the amount. So you see here on this one, I have 1, 2, 3, and then there's a fourth one that couldn't be drilled out, but we don't have it. We only need 3. And then, so that controls your low speed, your low dampening. And then for your high speed dampening, you just adjust that tension right there. And that's basically how an emulator works. All right, so now that I showed you how the actual valve itself works, you can see that now we can actually control independently our low speed dampening and our high speed dampening, right? So now our low speed dampening is controlled by the orifice plate seen here on the top of the valve, and our high speed dampening is controlled by the actual orifice plate moving out of the way and fully opening up. Whereas before, both our low speed and our high speed dampening were just controlled by the holes in the actual dampening rod. We widened up those holes, placed this valve on top of the dampening rod where it used to be unrestricted, and moved the control to up here. So now this valve would just be installed right here, and that's how we would control our oil moving through there, through the forks. So I hope you learned something today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any more questions, just comment down below. If you want to see more videos like this, where I kind of go into detail about how things work and why they work how they do, let me know. Anyways, have a great day. Bye.